This chilling story begins with an old and blind man living in a secluded house deep in the forest. The old man had adopted a girl named Phoenix and lived with her and a very intelligent dog. The old man treated Phoenix as his own daughter. He had only told her a little about her biological parents. Her mother had died in a house fire, and her father had succumbed to an illness. Afterward, he adopted her and took her in. Phoenix felt somewhat grateful that this old man was taking care of her. Although the old man was blind, he was highly aware of everything around him, relying on his sharp senses. He strictly forbade Phoenix from wandering too far outside because her life could be in danger. Phoenix's best friend, Mendez, would sometimes come to invite her to play. One day, Mendez arrived with her truck to take Phoenix out, but the old man refused. However, Phoenix insisted so much that he had no choice but to let her go. Mendez took Phoenix in her car, and as they drove, the two talked a lot. Phoenix began to miss her late mother deeply. She wanted to visit her old house to pray for her mother, so she asked Mendez to take her to the house in the city. When they arrived, Phoenix entered the house, which had been completely reduced to ashes, with all the furniture burnt to cinders. She tried to pray for her mother, but soon, she felt a strange presence in the house, as if someone else was there. Terrified, Phoenix ran out to the garden. Mendez had some errands to run, so she asked Phoenix to stay there for a while. In the garden, Phoenix enjoyed several swings and rides, something she rarely got permission to do. It had been a long time since she had felt so happy, enjoying her brief moment of freedom. Phoenix went to the bathroom to freshen up. As she tried to leave, she encountered a man named Rylan, a gangster with malicious intentions. His gaze and demeanor made his intentions very clear. Phoenix, unaware of the danger, ignored him and attempted to leave. However, Rylan blocked her path. Before he could act, Phoenix's loyal dog arrived, barking loudly, prompting her to leave with the dog. Even as she walked away, Rylan touched her hair, revealing his sinister motives. Later, Mendez returned and took Phoenix back home in her truck. The old man thanked Mendez for looking after Phoenix, and she left in her truck. However, Rylan was still watching from the shadows, gathering information about Phoenix and her guardian. Instead of following Phoenix directly, Rylan began tailing Mendez. He intercepted her truck by blocking the road with his car, preventing her from leaving. An argument broke out between Mendez and Rylan. She demanded he move his car, but he refused. At that moment, it became evident that Rylan wasn't alone. His gang members appeared and forcefully entered Mendez's truck. They attacked her, strangling her in the secluded area, where no one could hear her cries for help. Tragically, Mendez lost her life at the hands of the gangsters. Rylan and his gang then shifted their focus to Phoenix's house. Meanwhile, Phoenix questioned the old man about why he wouldn't let her interact with other children. The old man explained again that it was for her safety, as she was different and he didn't want her to get hurt. His concern was genuine, but Phoenix still felt trapped by his overprotectiveness. Outside the house, the old man's loyal dog sensed something unusual. It ventured out to investigate, only to be ambushed and killed by Rylan and his gang. With the dog out of the way, the gang began sneaking into the house, intending to loot it and cause harm. Unaware of the approaching danger, the old man carried food for his dog, only to discover the unfolding threat. The old man called out for his dog, but it didn't come, making him suspicious. He realized something was wrong. Meanwhile, Rylan and his gang had already managed to break into the house. Phoenix also heard the noises and understood that intruders had entered. Fortunately, the old man had trained Phoenix well on how to handle such situations. He had taught her to use self-defense and move from one room to another if needed. Following the old man's instructions, Phoenix crawled under the bed and used a hidden passage to escape to another room. So far, she hadn't come face to face with any of the intruders. As she approached a door, thinking she could escape from there, one of Rylan's gang members suddenly blocked the way. Terrified, Phoenix tried to run in the opposite direction. Thankfully, the old man had locked all the main doors to prevent outsiders from easily entering the house. The scene then shifted to the old man, who was in the forest searching for his dog. Tragically, he discovered the dog's lifeless body. By touching it, he realized the dog had been shot. This confirmed his suspicion: someone was trying to invade the house. Determined to protect Phoenix, the old man rushed back toward the house. Meanwhile, Phoenix attempted to escape through a window, but one of Rylan's men appeared with a gun and was about to shoot her. At the last moment, the old man arrived and tackled the intruder from behind. The old man, despite his blindness and age, was incredibly strong and handled the situation effectively. He instructed Phoenix to run to the basement and hide. Phoenix, injured and scared, managed to escape but was soon shoved by another gang member, causing her to fall and hurt herself. She still managed to reach the basement. There, she found a metal cupboard designed for safety, which the old man had specially prepared for such emergencies. The cupboard was almost impossible to open from the outside, with only a small opening for breathing. Phoenix climbed inside, hiding and protecting herself as the gang continued their search for her in the house. The old man, meanwhile, braced himself to confront the gang head-on, knowing he had to protect Phoenix at all costs. The blind man had one of Ryland's gang members in his grip, but the gangster managed to injure him severely with a weapon, forcing the blind man to let him go. The wounded old man retreated to his garage to tend to his injuries. However, he realized that the gang member had followed him there. Moving stealthily, the blind man ambushed the intruder and beat him severely. Meanwhile, Phoenix remained in the basement, hiding inside the metal cupboard. The gangsters were puzzled, unable to figure out how to get her out. One of them decided to flood the cupboard with water, hoping to force her out or drown her. While this was happening, the blind man was locked in another brutal fight with one of the gang members. During the scuffle, a gunshot rang out, alerting another gangster who came to investigate. However, upon arriving, the new intruder found his comrade severely injured by the blind man, who had already disappeared to rescue Phoenix. Back in the basement, the gangster trying to harm Phoenix grew increasingly desperate. He rigged an electrical wire to threaten the blind man, planning to electrify the water and kill Phoenix if the old man didn't surrender. The gangster taunted him, demanding that he show himself. Suddenly, a gas cylinder rolled into the basement, releasing a flammable gas cloud. The gangster realized that if he fired his gun, the entire area would explode. Forced to retreat from his plan, he put away his weapon. But the water level in the cupboard continued to rise, putting Phoenix in mortal danger. The tension increased as the gangster decided to physically challenge the blind man, believing he could easily overpower an old and blind opponent. This assumption turned out to be a grave mistake. Though he couldn't see, the blind man's heightened senses and combat skills made him a formidable opponent. As the fight began, the blind man dominated from the start. His movements were precise, and he used his surroundings to his advantage, landing powerful strikes against the larger, more muscular gangster. Despite his injuries, the blind man fought like a true warrior, determined to protect Phoenix at all costs. As the brutal battle continued, the water in the cupboard rose higher, and the stakes for Phoenix's life became even more critical. The blind man had inflicted significant damage on the gangster, ultimately throwing him aside. Grabbing a gun, the blind man shot directly at the source of the gas leak. The resulting explosion sent the gangster flying and injured him severely. Seizing the moment, the blind man quickly removed the live wire from the water and opened the cupboard to pull Phoenix out. She had narrowly escaped death, any more rising water, and she would have suffocated or been electrocuted. While the blind man managed to eliminate one of the gangsters, Ryland and his remaining men arrived at the house, combing the area for Phoenix and the old man. Despite his injuries, the blind man prioritized Phoenix's safety. He carried her to a safer location, shielding her as best as he could. Ryland, armed and ready, confronted Phoenix, claiming, "You're trusting the wrong person. That old man you believe in is nothing but a murderer." As Ryland stepped closer to Phoenix, the blind man launched a surprise attack on him. However, Ryland had several gang members with him who quickly overpowered the old man. They captured him and subjected him to brutal torture. Ryland then turned his attention to Phoenix, attempting to manipulate her. "Don't trust this man. He isn't your protector, he's a monster," Ryland said, signaling his men to kill the blind man. Finally, Ryland revealed his true identity, shocking Phoenix. "I am your father," he said. He explained how their house had burned down, killing her mother. "I was blamed for the fire and spent 8 years in prison," he continued. "While I was away, this blind man took you and raised you here in isolation. When I was released, I thought I'd lost you forever. But when you returned to the burned house to pay tribute to your mother, I saw you. From that moment, I've been following you, trying to bring you back." Ryland's revelations left Phoenix shaken and confused. Meanwhile, Ryland ordered one of his men to take Phoenix to a safe place. With Phoenix out of the way, Ryland and the rest of his gang focused on hunting down the blind man, determined to end him once and for all. Ryland's man was trying to force himself on Phoenix, which enraged her, and she started attacking him. The man retaliated and fought back, but the blind man, who was hiding nearby, witnessed everything. To save Phoenix, he attacked the man and killed him completely. The blind man then took Phoenix to an upper room and told her, "Jump from here and escape." However, Phoenix refused, saying, "I won't leave you behind." Suddenly, Ryland's dog, which he had sent himself, arrived at the scene and attacked the blind man. But since the blind man never harmed animals, he managed to trap the dog on the other side of a grill to protect himself temporarily. He then helped Phoenix climb down safely and urged her to run away. Meanwhile, one of Rylan's men arrived and knocked Phoenix unconscious before taking her away. Rylan, determined to kill the old blind man, set the entire house on fire. The fire rapidly spread and was closing in on them. The blind man first freed the trapped dog, allowing it to escape, and then jumped to save himself. Despite being injured, he survived the leap. However, the blind man's revenge was far from over. His true anger and abilities, which none of Rylan's gang members had witnessed yet, were about to unfold. When Phoenix regained consciousness, she found herself in a completely unfamiliar place. It was none other than Rylan's house. Phoenix did not want to stay with Rylan and began trying to return to the old blind man. Rylan didn't stop her. However, as soon as Phoenix was about to leave, a song began to play. Phoenix recognized it instantly, as it was the same song her mother used to play. She turned to look at Rylan, and suddenly, from the shadows, a woman emerged. It was none other than Phoenix's mother. Seeing her mother, Phoenix became very emotional and rushed to her, engaging in conversation. Her mother approached Rylan and revealed, "Years ago, our house had a basement where many chemicals were stored. And her daughter Phoenix to escape. He quickly takes them to a secure place, but the blind man is still tracking them." Meanwhile, Phoenix's mother reveals her true intentions. She intended to transplant Phoenix's heart into her own body to survive. Their plan depended on matching DNA and blood groups, which were crucial for a successful transplant. Desperate to execute their plan, they quickly sedate Phoenix by administering a drug-laced juice and leave her unconscious. On the other side, the blind man becomes aware of Phoenix's peril. Seeing the danger, the blind man takes control. He gathers equipment and enters a car where he finds Phoenix's friend's lifeless body, killed by Rylan and his gang. Now, the blind man is determined to seek revenge. He knows Rylan's dog will lead him to their house, so he relentlessly pursues the dog. Meanwhile, Rylan plans to transplant his daughter's heart into his wife with the help of a private doctor. This procedure will save his wife, ensuring she lives longer. However, the power suddenly goes out, disrupting the process. Rylan sends one of his men to investigate, but the blind man is waiting, ready to strike. The man is brutally attacked, leaving Rylan no choice but to confront the blind man himself. As he searches for his man, Rylan comes face to face with his dog, which alerts him that the blind man is present. Phoenix is being transferred to a safer location, while all the gang members are sent downstairs to eliminate the blind man. Armed with guns, they reach the basement but are shocked to find the blind man lying motionless. Slowly, they begin to advance, only to encounter water all around them. As they step into the water, ripples begin to move toward the blind man, alerting him to the presence of enemies. In a split second, the blind man pulls out his gun and begins attacking all the gang members. He manages to kill everyone except one member. This remaining gang member reveals that he doesn't want to harm the blind man, rather, he is on his side. This gang member knows the truth about Rylan, understanding how deceitful he is and how far he will go to achieve his selfish goals. He doesn't want an innocent child to be sacrificed, so he decides to help the blind man save Phoenix. Meanwhile, Rylan is frantically running away with his wife, knowing how dangerous the blind man is. However, darkness suddenly engulfs the area. The blind man quickly takes advantage of the situation, approaching the doctor assisting Rylan and killing him. Terrified, Rylan continues to move forward with his wife. Armed with a gun, he fires at any sound he hears, but the darkness works in favor of the blind man. The blind man senses everything even in the dark, and slowly begins releasing gas into the air. As the gas spreads, Rylan finds himself unable to see again. In a desperate attempt, Rylan fires at the windows using his gun, creating light that temporarily illuminates the space. Now, Rylan can see the blind man. However, the blind man is clever and starts dispersing more gas. With the visibility reduced, Rylan is again at a disadvantage. Suddenly, he is attacked by the blind man, who injures him severely. Enraged, Rylan begins a barrage of gunfire, but the blind man manages to vanish. Amidst the chaos, Rylan hears a sound, someone is struggling. When he goes to check, he finds that it's the same blind man torturing a gang member, and the sounds of suffering echo in the darkness. At that moment, Rylan's wife, sitting in a wheelchair, was moving forward uncontrollably. In his desperation, Rylan accidentally shot her, and she began to suffer intensely. Within moments, her life faded away. The wheelchair, still moving, led her toward a small space where it eventually tipped over, causing her to fall. What was shocking was that Rylan had tied Phoenix to that same wheelchair. As his wife was moving forward, Phoenix was moving in the same direction. Both of them fell into a lower area, sustaining severe injuries. However, Phoenix was protected because she landed on Rylan's wife, keeping her relatively safe until the situation stabilized. Meanwhile, a fierce battle raged between Rylan and the blind man. However, Rylan was no match for the blind man, who quickly overpowered him. The blind man brutally attacked Rylan, gouging out both of his eyes, rendering him completely blind, just like him. Left injured and helpless, Rylan was left to face the consequences of his actions, for the blind man deemed him deserving of this punishment. The blind man then sensed that Phoenix was standing right in front of him. Taking full responsibility for his actions, he confessed that he was not her father. In the past, he had committed numerous murders, but since Phoenix entered his life, his perspective changed. He admitted that he regretted his past actions and vowed that if given a chance, he would strive to become a better person, a normal human being. Despite his words, Phoenix, filled with fear, eventually fled the scene. However, just as she escaped, Rylan appeared from behind and stabbed the blind man with a knife, severely injuring him. His only goal was to take the blind man's life. In a sudden twist, Phoenix, wielding a sword, rushed back to the blind man and thrust it deep into Rylan's stomach. Rylan's life ended with that final attack, leaving him lifeless. Now alone, Phoenix went directly to the injured blind man. She vowed to save him no matter what, promising that she would help him heal. The blind man, touched by her compassion, smiled and expressed gratitude. He said, "You have changed my life. I have realized how wrong it is to take lives, and if I ever get the chance, I will strive to become a better person." Moments later, the blind man took his last breath, leaving Phoenix in sorrow but with a sense of hope. Phoenix had witnessed all those haunting scenes with her own eyes, scenes she would likely never forget for the rest of her life. She returned to an orphanage where many children, like her, were seeking a better future. She made the decision to become a better person going forward. In the end, we are shown that Rylan's dog approached the blind man and began licking his hands. Suddenly, the blind man's fingers twitched, signaling that he was still alive. The story ends with this suspense, leaving the viewers to wonder about what happens next.